Good evening. Welcome, everyone. We're coming on the heels of the holiday of Shavuos. After the holiday of Shavuos, the summer really kicks in. And there is a custom, although not all follow this custom, but there is a custom that from the weeks of Pesach to Shavuos, we learn chapter a week from Ethics of Our Fathers on Shabbos afternoon after Mincha. And then there's a custom to continue this study through the summer till Rosh Hashanah. Every week we learn another chapter of Ethics of Our Fathers. So we begin this week following this custom, which the Chabad Rebbes did in public. This became the Chabad custom, of course, where the Alter Rebbe writes, Yesh Hagin, there are those that have the custom to study all of the weeks of Ethics of Our Fathers, all the weeks of the summer. So we are included in that Yesh Hagin, those that are following this custom. So after Shavuos, we receive the Torah and we go to chapter 1 of Ethics of Our Fathers. And we'll pick up on a Mishnah over here, and we'll talk today about Hillel, page 272 in the Siddur that we have over here. You could look at page 272. It's Ethics of Our Fathers, chapter 1, Mishnah 12. And over there, the Mishnah says as follows. I'll give you a minute to get to the page. Hillel says as follows: Hillel v'Shammai kibul mihem. Hillel and Shammai received the Torah from Shammai and Naftalion. Hillel would say, "Havei mi talmidiv shel Aharon." You should be from the students of Aaron. Ohev shalom, lover of peace. V'rodev shalom, pursuer of peace. Ohev esabrios, lover of the creations. And mekarvan la Torah, and drawing them close to the Torah. That's Mishnah 12. Mishnah 13, he would say, meaning Hillel, continuation, another statement of Hillel. Negad Shema Avad Shemei, he who seeks renown, loses his name. Udlo Moisif Yosef, if you don't increase in your knowledge of Torah, so then you will decrease. Udlo Yalef Ketola Chayev, and if you don't study Torah, then you're deserving of death. And someone who exploits the crown of Torah for his own personal needs shall perish. Then he continues, Mishnah 3, a third statement that he would say. If I am not for myself, who is for me? And if I'm only for myself, what am I? And if not now, then when? Three statements from Hillel, three broken up into three separate Mishnayos and Ethics of Our Fathers, chapter number 1. So here is a very interesting idea. In general, Ethics of Our Fathers are the Pirkei Avos, are teachings, an assembly of teachings of ethics that the sages said in the yeshivas. They told to their students. That's how it got recorded, because people listened, students listened, and they eventually was recorded. Now we have to assume very safely that all of the sages that are quoted in Ethics of Our Fathers said a lot more than just what's quoted in their name. They had a lot more shmuzin and farbringens, and a lot more classes and lectures, not only on Jewish law. In other words, we're talking here in Pirkei Avos, Ethics of Our Fathers, is lifnim yeshuras hadin, going beyond that which is required. The rest of the Mishnayos discuss the law which is required. So over there, there's debate. Over there, there's discussion. Ethics of Our Fathers, there's no debate. They're just teachings and sayings of the rabbis, what they gave over morals and ethics to their students. I'm sure Hillel had more than 3 Mishnahs to give over during his years and years of teaching his thousands and thousands of students. And likewise, all of the other sages included in chapter 1 and the remaining chapters as well, they had a lot more what to say than just what is recorded here. So why were these teachings chosen to be recorded in Ethics of Our Fathers? What's special about these teachings? Anyone know? So the Rebbe, different people offer different interpretations and commentary on Ethics of Our Fathers, but the Rebbe explains sometimes revolutionary ways of understanding different parts of Torah, like Rashi, for example, and Pirkei Avos as well. The Rebbe would give a teaching on Pirkei Avos, and a revolutionary teaching, a whole new perspective and a whole new way to study the Pirkei Avos. And the Rebbe taught that these particular teachings are selected from among many statements which each of these sages made, because these teachings are connected and are significantly connected either with particular events of this sage's life or connected with the name of the sage. In other words, these are essential teachings to who the sage was. It wasn't only a teaching, these were a way of life for these sages. In these quotes, in these Mishnayos, you will find the essence of what this rabbi stood for and lived for. This is what they lived by. It wasn't just, oh, one time on this and this day, the rabbi gave a sermon and we gave a farbrengen and he said something beautifully and someone once recorded it. No, these are things that he would constantly say. He would constantly live with. This was his life. And you can see it throughout his life at different points. And that's why these were chosen, because these really epitomize and express who this sage was. And in our case, we're talking about Hillel today. These three Mishnayos over here have a particular connection with Hillel the man. Not only Hillel the teacher, but Hillel the rabbi, but Hillel the man, Hillel the sage, Hillel the Jew. If you want to know who Hillel was, you see what he says in Pirkei Avos, and you'll have a very good window into the life of Hillel. So we'll begin with the question over here. These three Mishnayos, if those are familiar with Hebrew, will notice right away that there's something very strange over here. And that is, Mishnah 12 is said in Hebrew words. Mishnah 13 is Aramaic words, and Mishnah 14 is Hebrew words again. Which begs the question, why is Mishnah 13 in Aramaic words? All of the Mishnayos is pretty much said in Hebrew. It's recorded in Hebrew. Why this particular Mishnah, this particular teaching, is it given over in Aramaic? It's very, very strange. Now, there is another Mishnayos in Ethics of Our Fathers that also is in Aramaic. And for that, you can turn to it's chapter 5, Mishnah 21, on page 290, a few pages later. There's one more Mishnayos that actually is also written in Aramaic wording, and that is a teaching of Ben Bagbag, the sage named Ben Bagbag, who said, learn it and learn it, for everything is in it. And look deeply into it. And grow old and gray over it. And he said, don't ever leave it. For there is nothing greater, there's no greater attribute, no greater virtue than it. And then it says, Ben Hey Yomer, Ben Hey would say, Lufum Tzara Agra, commensurate with the pain is the reward. This is all in Aramaic. And the question obviously over there is also, why does this Mishnah use Aramaic wording? So for this Mishnah over here, we can offer the following explanation. Ben Bagbag and Ben Hey, it's a very strange name, you may have noticed. It doesn't sound like a regular name, Bagbag and Hey. The reason why Ben Bagbag and Ben Hey were called Ben Bagbag and Ben Hey is due to the fact that they were converts. Converts, we know, when we call up a convert to the Torah, a man, we say Ben, this person's name, Ben Avraham, the son of Avraham. For a woman, we would use the name Sarah. Avraham and Sarah were unique because Avraham and Sarah, their name were changed by Almighty God. Originally, his name was Avram, and her name was Sarai. But God changed his name to Avraham by adding a hey. And likewise, Sarai, God switched the yud for a hey, making it Sarah. So Avram and Sarah are both unique, that they are the people that God added the letter hey to their name. So in order to identify these sages, they called in Ben Hey, the son of the Hey and the Hey, to note that they were converts. Ben Bag also, Bag is spelled with Beis Gimel. Beis and Gimel together is 2 and 3 make 5, which is a Hey. So Bag and Hey are both names or nicknames for saying that these two were sages that were converts, which it would make sense why their teachings are recorded in Aramaic, because if they were converts, their first language was Aramaic. That was the way they probably spoke and they taught. It would be equivalent to an American rabbi today speaking in English. So they may very well likely be quoted and teaching in English because that's their first language. So these two rabbis, that's the way they spoke. But Hillel, going back to Hillel was no convert. Hillel had a very, very prestigious origin, had a very prestigious history. He came from the stock of the tribe of Judah. He came from the descendants, the seed of King David. He was a leader and a prince of the Jewish people. So why would Hillel's teaching be quoted in Aramaic? It certainly was not Hillel's way, where a language that he usually would give over his Torah thoughts. And this is the only Mishnah that we have over here, going back to Hillel, Mishnah in chapter 1, Mishnah number 13. This is the only one that we have where Hillel's teaching is quoted in Aramaic. So there must be something unique about this that we decide that we're going to move it to Aramaic as opposed to the regular Hebrew. And in order to understand this, we're going to get to this famous story in the Gemara about Hillel. Who was Hillel? Let's try to get to know Hillel and Hillel's personality. The Gemara in Tractate Shabbos, page 31a, records the famous story of the convert who walks over to Shammai and Hillel and says, "Convert me while I stand on one foot. Teach me the whole Torah while I stand on one foot." We'll read it over here from the Gemara. The Gemara says as follows. There are actually three stories. Three separate stories the Gemara says. We'll read three. We'll read through all of them. I'm trying to go through a little bit quickly. The Gemara says like this. Mais Taner Rabbanan, our rabbis taught in a brisa. Once happened that a Gentile came before Shammai. And he told him like this, Kama Torahs yesh lechem, how many Torahs did you Jews have? Omar Loi, so Shammai replies to him and says, Shtayim, we have two Torahs. One written Torah and one oral Torah. Torah shebechsav and Torah shebal peh. Omar Loi, so this Gentile turns to Shammai and he says, Shebechsav ani mincha. When it comes to the written Torah, I believe you that the written Torah is from God. I believe that that's divinely ordained. But the oral Torah, he said, I don't believe you. I don't believe in that oral Torah. I don't believe in the sages. I don't believe in the traditions. He said, I want you to convert me, Shammai, on condition that you will teach me the whole Torah, Shebechsav, the written Torah. I believe in it. I want to know it. Teach it to me and I convert. But the other Torah is not for me. So what did Shammai do? Shammai berated him for his making fun, and he sent him away disapprovingly. Shammai shoot him away. Now this Gentile comes before Hillel, and he tells him the same thing, with the same request, and Hillel converts him. Hillel converted him. Why did Hillel convert him? Because Hillel felt that it was enough. His belief in Torah was enough to convert. Now, one day, Hillel was teaching the alphabet, the Hebrew alphabet. And Hillel turns to this Gentile, and this convert, and he tells him, Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet. This is an Aleph, this is a Beis, this is a Gimel, and this is a Dalet. He taught him all the Aleph, Beis. Lamacha the next day, Apechle, Hillel reversed what he told him up until now. So whereas yesterday he told him this is an Aleph, this is a Beis, now he said this is actually a Tuf, and this is a Shin, and this is a Reish, and this is a Kuf, and this is a Tzadik. Hillel told him all back. He reversed the whole thing on him now. Amalei, so the convert is confused. He turns to Hillel and he says, yesterday you told me something differently. Now you tell me this is an Aleph. Today you tell me this is a Tuf. What's going on over here? Amalei, so Hillel replies to this convert and he tells him like this. You see, are you not relying upon me to recognize the names and the shapes and the sounds of the Aleph base? So you rely on me also when I tell you this is an oral Torah. In other words, how do you know what an Aleph is? How do you know what a Beis is? How do you know what a Gimel is? Because I told you this is an Aleph. And I told you this is the shape, and I told you this is the sound, right? So you're relying on the rabbis to tell you the Aleph Beis. So that means you got to rely on the rabbis to tell you about the oral Torah too. That's how Hillel made the point to this convert on the importance of believing in the oral Torah the way the rabbis had the tradition passed down from generation to generation and the teachings that the rabbis developed over the years. That was one story. Another story, the Gemara says, another story. A non-Jew approaches Shammai and he tells him like this. He says, convert me, and a condition, you teach me the entire Torah. While I'm standing on one foot. So when Shammai heard this, he pushed the person away with the ruler that he was holding in his hand. He comes before Hillel. Guiding Hillel converts him. He tells him, that which is despisable, hateful to you, do not do to your fellow. This is the entire Torah. And all the rest is in elaboration and commentary on that. Zilu Gemara, now go and learn it. In other words, you asked me to convert you while you're standing on one foot, I convert you while you're standing on one foot. Do not do to others what you don't want done to yourself. Now go and study the rest. That was the second story. So Shammai told him, get out of here, and Hillel converted him. Third story, the Gemara says, Shuv Ma'aseh ben Achiyech. There was another incident with a non-Jew. He was once walking behind the study hall, the yeshiva. And he heard the voice of a teacher saying out loud. There was a teacher teaching the students, and the teacher said as follows. He was teaching the verse, these are the vestments that we must make for the high priest, the breastplate, the ephod and the ephod, etc. So the Gentile stops, he walks in, and he says, Halol l'mi. Who are we making this breastplate and this ephod and these fancy garments for? Who are we making these garments for? So the students turned to him and they told him, the Kohen Gadol, this is for our high priest. We have a verse, we're studying about the garments for the high priest. So when the priest heard this, he said to himself, let me go and convert with the intention that they will appoint me to be their Kohen Gadol. In other words, the non-Jew got a certain interest. He wanted to be the Kohen Gadol. He was excited by this clothing, by these garments, by these vestments. He said, I want it, so let me go convert, and they'll make me the Kohen Gadol. Shammai. So he comes before Shammai. Omar Leni tells him as follows. Gaireni, convert me. Aminash Pesmeni Kohen Gadol, on condition that you're going to appoint me to be your high priest. Can you imagine such a person? Appoint me, I'm not Jewish now. I want you to convert me, and on the condition you're going to appoint me to be your high priest. Right? What do you think Shammai tells him? Shammai sends him packing. He pushes him away with the ruler that's in his hand. Hillel, he comes before Hillel. And Hillel converts him. Hillel converted the guy. The Brisa continues. Omar Loi, before Hillel did the conversion, Hillel tells him like this. Do we ever appoint a king, someone to the position of a king, unless they're familiar with the ceremonies of royalty? Go and learn about the ceremonies of royalty. In other words, he told him, you're going to become the Kohen Gadol. You want to become the Kohen Gadol. You got to learn about the rules and regulations and proper etiquette and behaviors of the Kohen Gadol. If that's what you want to become, you got to know, you got to study what that's all about. Holach v'kara. So he went and began to study, and he began to read the Torah, and he began from the beginning, and then he reached the verse that says, Kevin Shigev Azara Korav Yumos. He reached the verse that says that any stranger who approaches shall die. This is a verse in the book of Numbers. And the verse is telling us that anyone who's not a Kohen, who performs the essential elements of the sacrificial service, will suffer death by the hands of God. Amar Lei, he says to Hillel, Mikra Zal Min Namar. Who is this verse talking about? The verse says, any stranger who approaches God shall die. Who is this verse talking about? Amar Lei, so he told him like this, Afil Adad Melech Yisrael. Even King David, the king of Israel, even he is included in the verse that says a stranger who approaches to do the service in the temple of God shall be put to death by the hands of God. Now this guy was completely taken aback by this. You understand? You mean to tell me that the Jewish king from the tribe of David, David himself, if he approached to do the service in the temple, he would die at the hands of God? So when the convert thought about this idea, he formulated a Kal V'chomer argument to himself. He said like this: if a regular Jewish Israelite, a regular Jew, born to a Jewish mother, born to a Jewish family, they are considered to be children of Almighty God, and out of love that God feels toward them, He called them B'ni B'chayri Yisrael, my firstborn son Israel. And nevertheless, what does the verse say about the Jewish people? Although God says, you are my firstborn son, the same God said that if you, a stranger, approach, a non-Kohen approaches me in the temple, you'll be put to death. So, Geir, how much more so? Someone who is a mere convert, who comes to the Jewish people with his staff and his traveling bag. How much more so is this person considered to be a stranger with respect to the kahuna? So he said to himself, I realized, in other words, he understood that it's no monkey business. You can't just become a Kohen Gadol. It doesn't just work like that. Balifnei Shammai. So after coming to this conclusion, this guy goes back to Shammai. Omar La, he tells Shammai like this: Klum roya ani lias Kohen Gadol. Am I even possibly ever able to become a high priest? The Torah said that anyone who's not a Kohen will be put to death if they do the service. In other words, why didn't you tell this to me? I came and I told you, convert me on condition that you appoint me Kohen Gadol. All you should have done was told me, buddy, you can't become a Kohen Gadol. You can't buy yourself into it. It doesn't work that way. And I would have walked away. You should have told that to me. Then he goes to Hillel and he tells him like this: Hillel, the true humble person, let blessings come to rest upon your head. Because through your gentle and humble guidance, you brought me under the wings of the divine presence. In other words, had Shammai told me the truth, I wouldn't be Jewish. But because you enveloped me with love, you embraced me with love, and you brought me close. You didn't tell me it's impossible. You told me, fine, I'll convert you. Then you told me afterwards to go start learning about it. And on my own, I came to this realization. But now I'm happy to be Jewish. And thank you very much for doing it this way. That's what this Gentile who converted to Judaism told Hillel. Now the Brisa concludes like this. A little while later, these three Gentile converts that used to be Gentiles, all met up in the bar in the bar, they met up one day, and they started talking between each other about their stories, how they came about to convert. Omru, and they said, when each one heard each other's story, they said like this: the sternness of Shammai sought to banish us from the world of true devotion to Almighty God. And it was the patient, humble Hillel who brought us under the wings of the divine presence. This is a story in the Gemara, three stories summing up the personality of Hillel in a very beautiful way. And we see from these stories that what did Hillel say in the beginning? His first teaching over here. In Mishnah 12, have imi tamidav shel Aaron, brief from the students of Aaron, oyev shalom, love peace, v'reidev shalom, pursue peace, oyev es abriyas, love the creations, and mekarven later, bring them close to God. Who's the creations? The creations refers to even non-Jews. Non-Jews are creations of Almighty God. And nevertheless, Hillel says you are to draw them close to Torah. Always treat everybody with love. Always seek out peace. It wasn't just a teaching of Hillel. You see from the Gemara, this was Hillel's way of life. That even non-Jews who were looking to convert picked up on this, and they would later in their life thank Hillel for treating them, although they were all meshuga. Each one came with a more bizarre condition. Convert me on condition I stand on one foot. Convert me on condition you're going to appoint me to become the Kohen Gadol. These are very strange conditions where most rabbis would become impatient and throw them away, throw them out of the Beis Medrash, just like Shammai did. But Hillel had a different approach. Hillel said, there's a space for you. We'll make space for you even with your mishigas. And each one of them realized later on in their life how they had a mishigas, and they came around. But they came around to be under the wings of the Shekhinah, to see how they fit under and fit in to the divine plan for them. Hillel, although we call him Hillel, Hillel actually has a name, Hillel HaBavli, Hillel the Babylonian. Why was Hillel called Hillel the Babylonian? Because Hillel originally came from Babylonia. He moved to Israel from Babylonia. He made Aliyah, as we would call it today. And he moved and he became the leader of the Jewish people. What's the story? How did Hillel become the leader of the Jewish people? So the Gemara says a story how Hillel became the leader of the Jewish people as well. The Gemara says like this in Pesachim, it's a story about Pesach. And it was a story where Pesach, the first day of Pesach, was on Saturday night. And we know that the sacrificial offering for Pesach, called the Korban Pesach, is to be brought during the afternoon of the Erev Pesach, the day before Pesach, right? So if Shabbos is Erev Pesach, the question became, well, are we permitted to bring the Jewish people, are we supposed to bring the Pesach offering on Shabbos? Does the mitzvah to bring the Korban Pesach override Shabbos or not? Should we bring the sacrifice on Friday before Shabbos, Friday afternoon? Or does it override Shabbos and we do it on Shabbos? This was a question that reached to the top of the Jewish leadership and they didn't know the answer. Obviously, it must have been many, many, many years since the last time Pesach fell out on a Saturday night. So that's why they forgot the law. Or for other reasons. But that's the facts. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know the details of the law. So they asked, does anybody know the law? They put out a statement. Does anybody know the law? Can anybody help us out over here? And they came and they said, there is a gentleman who knows the law. He just came up from Babylonia and he knows the halacha. And his name is Hillel the Bavli, Hillel the Babylonian. And he would know what you're supposed to do. So they went and they called Hillel. And they asked Hillel, does the Korban Pesach override the Shabbos or not? And he told them that yes, indeed, it overrides the Shabbos. And he taught them the verse from which we learn out that Pesach overrides the Shabbos. And as soon as Hillel taught this to them, they realized that Hillel was the most well-versed sage present, and they appointed him immediately to be the leader of the Jewish people. That's the story. So he knew something nobody else knew. And he began to teach everybody the laws of Pesach. Now, Hillel said like this. There was a whole question of what about bringing the knife? How do you carry the knife to bring the Korban Pesach? But that's secondary. So Hillel said, how did I know what the law is? You know why you don't know what the law is and I knew what the law was? How could it be? Why did Hillel remember? Nobody else remembered. Hillel told him, I'll tell you why. Because you guys did not properly learn from and serve the leaders of the generation before us, Shmaya and Naftalion. Shmai and Avtalim were the two sages of the previous generation, and you people did not treat them with the proper honor and respect. You people did not serve them properly. However, because I served Shmai and Avtalim properly, that's why I know the halacha, and you guys forgot the halacha. That's what Hillel told them. Now, then they asked, what about carrying the knife? Is it permitted to carry the knife on Shabbos or not? So what happened to Hillel? Hillel said, Shamaiti v'shachachti. I knew this law, but I forgot it. I forgot what the law is about carrying the knife on Shabbos. So what did Hillel say? What's the solution? If Hillel didn't know, nobody knew. So he said, you know what we're going to do? He said, just wait and see what the Jewish people do. The Jewish people have a knack for knowing what to do. And you'll see the way they do it is going to be the correct way. And they went and they saw how the Jewish people, when they were bringing their sacrifices to the temple, so the people that were bringing a lamb, they took the knife and they put it in the wool of the lamb. And the people that were bringing a goat, which doesn't have wool, to be able to stick the knife into, so they put it in between the horns of the goat. And Hillel saw this and he said, I remembered this is exactly what I learned. This is what Shmai and Avtalion taught me, that this is how the knife is carried and brought to the temple. You can't carry it by yourself, but you put it on your animal. Either you get it into the wool of the animal or between their horns, and the animal carries it on them. So what do you see from this now? We have now an interesting story. Hillel comes off that he knows everything. And then Hillel tells everyone the reason why I know everything is because I was the one that properly served Shmai and Avtalion and you did not. And then the next question that came his way, he forgot the halacha. And then he saw it and he said, yes, I remember that this is the halacha. Again, an interesting story over here, but the question needs to be asked, why was it necessary for Hillel to rebuke them and tell them that you don't know because you didn't serve Shmai and Avtalion and I did? It comes across as a little bit arrogant.
Seems out of character.
Seems out of character. Seems out of character. It seems like he could have taught everybody without saying that. That's what it would seem like. And this is what the Rebbe explains. And it's because of this that Hillel forgot the law. It was almost like a punishment, sort of. Of course, I say the word when I say punishment, you'll excuse me, I don't mean in a real sense of the way it's usually used, because first of all, I'm in no one to ever say that Hillel was punished for everything doing something wrong. Hillel was in a league which is far greater than I'll ever reach. I'm not here to comment on Hillel doing the wrong thing. Chatz Shalom, everything Hillel did was correct. But on Hillel's level, Hillel's in the high, beautiful level that Hillel was, the way he served Hashem, which is indeed why they appointed him to be the leader and the prince of the Jewish people, because of his great character and because of his great wisdom and because of his great humility. These were the characteristic traits that put him in position to lead the Jewish people. But because he said this, it didn't fit into that. And that's why there's a consequence of that. He forgot one halacha. Because God wanted to humble Hillel. God wanted him to realize you should not have said that comment to everybody, because you could have done it without saying that comment. It was a learning experience for Hillel. He was young in his career. He just became in charge. And he had a learning moment right then and there that God wanted to give him that experience right in the beginning of his tenure as leader of the Jewish people. And that's why he was called perhaps Hillel HaBavli, Hillel the Babylonian. Because Bavel, the word Bavel is Babylonia, but the word Bavel comes from the word, it's like the word Bilal. Bilal means bolol, it means mixture, confusion. When a bunch of things mix together, it becomes chaos. There's no longer a proper definition, no more proper identities over there. And that reflected in the nature of the Torah study of the Babylonian style. If you look in the Talmud, Babylonian Talmud, it's a bunch of arguments and debates, and it's very difficult to come out with a clear picture of what's right and what's wrong, what to do and what not to do. Because it was Bavel, Bolol, Bilal, everything is mixed together. Ideas are mixed together. And it's very difficult to come out with clarity at the end of the discussion. Israel, on the other hand, is clarity. The light of God is there from the beginning of time to the beginning of the year to the end of the year. In other words, the Torah study in Israel is much clearer. It's much more illuminated than in Babylonia, which was considered darkness, to the light of the study in Israel. That's what this Mishnah is teaching us. Mishnah 13 in Aramaic. The Mishnah 13 in Aramaic is teaching us, in other words, with this background, we can understand now what's going on over here. In the land of Israel, it's less necessary, if you will, to warn against pride, because people automatically are closer to the truth over there. However, in Babylonia, where there is darkness, darkness itself makes a warning necessary. And Hillel is telling everybody, someone who seeks out his own name, someone who seeks renown, Avad Shemei, loses his name. He's warning the people against pride. And that's why he says it specifically in Aramaic, because it's specifically those who study the Aramaic style of study that need to hear this message. The first message of Hillel is a message of loving and pursuing peace and drawing people close to Torah, everybody, as we just articulated and clearly demonstrated in the three stories from the Gemara about who Hillel was. And now this story is going on the next, if you will, the next part of Hillel's life, where he's warning against pride. Don't be boastful, to remain humble, because it's very easy for you to know and then to become prideful and to become full of yourself. And we can say that Hillel had a little experience of this. And that's why he forgot the halacha. If you run after a name and if you're looking to pursue your own identity, your own greatness, then Avad Shemei, you're going to end up losing your name. Ego doesn't serve to make you actually greater. It actually becomes your Achilles heel. It actually takes you down. It actually causes you to lose your name. And this is what he means, Moisef Yosef. We have a whole, this is what it means, Negat Shema Avad Shemei. You'll lose your awareness of Torah as the name of God, Torah as holiness. You will disassociate and detach yourself from the holiness of Torah if you make it about pursuing a name for yourself. Then he goes on and he says, Moisef Yosef. If you do not add in the study of Torah, you're going to lose. Since we're warning over here in this Mishnah about the dangers of the ego, of being self-centered, egotism, so one could easily think that I'll avoid producing new Torah insights, lest I become too egotistical from my new Torah novel teachings and insights. So I won't pursue adding and increasing in my studies. I'll review that which I already know, but more than that, I won't do. So Hillel comes along and says, Udla Moisef Yosef, that someone who doesn't add will actually lose. The Alter Rebbe rules that every single person, every single soul has a part of Torah that's associated with their soul. And that's what we ask of God, give us our portion of your Torah. We have a soulful connection with the entire Torah, but there is one particular part in Torah, or more than one. There are areas in Torah which are specifically tailored to us and our soul and our talent to be able to expose its light to the rest of the world. So if we don't do it in our lifetime, our soul has to come back down to this world and do it in another lifetime. And Hillel is saying over here, don't think that you're going to abdicate your responsibility and not pursue producing new Torah insights. You'll just suffice with reviewing that which you already know. No, it can't be this way, because if you're not going to add, you're actually going to lose, because you're going to have to come back to this world another time. Your neshama is going to have to come back down to this world another time in order to expose the godly light in a specific area and realm of Torah that only your soul can do. And then he says, "Udal yalav k'tala chayiv." And if you do not teach, you're deserving of death. Which means even when a person does study Torah, and a person does work hard to develop new insights in Torah, a person can still think to themselves, if I now take these and I disseminate them, I start teaching others, now people are going to think of me as I'm a big rabbi, I'm a big sage, which automatically that will translate to me feeling too prideful about myself. So therefore, I will study, I'll even come up with new Torah insights, but I won't teach anyone. I'll stay away from teaching others. And that's what he says, no, you don't have this, you do not have this luxury. You have to study and you have to teach as well. And if you're not going to study, then you will fit in the category of what it says in the tractate Sota, Atzumim kol hargav, the mighty are all her slain, which just refers to the Torah scholars who refrain from teaching others. And finally, his last teaching is Ushtamish b'saga chalav. One who exploits the crown of Torah shall perish. This idea is specifically when it comes to Torah law, halacha, lemaisa, teaching practical halachic rulings. When we do study Torah, we have to make sure that we're studying Torah and we have to get to the bottom line. What is the Torah informing me of my life? How am I supposed to live differently? And when it comes to this refers to the crown of Torah. This is the way we study Torah in this fashion over here. And over here, the Rebbe is explaining over here that if you use halachic rulings for your own personal honor, so then you will become deprived of the spiritual elevation that happens through studying halacha. Usually when you study halacha, you become elevated to the level of the crown of Torah, which is level higher even than the head. The crown sits above the head. But if you take the halacha and you use it for your own personal honor, then you will not merit to reach the truth of the halacha. You will not merit to be elevated through the study of halacha. And this is leading us to the next part where he says, if I'm not for me, who am I? The next mission over there where Hillel says, in a Bryce, in the quote in the Gemara, Imani kan hakoil kan. He says, if I'm over here, then everyone is here. And if I'm not here, then who is here? And this fits beautifully with what he says, if I am not for myself, who is going to be for me? This is a beautiful insight into the life of Hillel. And you understand the perspective of Hillel. You have to have what we would call, Hillel is warning us, or Hillel is teaching us, I wouldn't say warning us, but Hillel is driving a message, trying to drive a message across to us. We asked, why is the middle one in Aramaic? Because that's particularly relevant to those who lived outside of Israel and studied in Aramaic, because that's just particularly relevant to them who have to live in this level of darkness and exile that those Jews lived in Israel didn't have to live through. But his main ideas that he's giving over to us, which are the main ideas of Hillel's life, is number one, to always be embracing of people when it comes to their curiosity of Torah. Always be a loving person when it comes to interpersonal relationships. Always be a pursuer of peace. And remember the responsibilities of studying Torah. Don't become prideful from it. Don't let that ego get to you. Because if you do, you should know that it's going to be your downfall. Your success is going to end up being your downfall. But don't think that you can run away from studying and discovering new ideas and even teaching halacha l'maisa. All of them are relevant for you. And our soul has to discover that which is relevant for our lives. And finally, Hillel says, you have to have a healthy self-esteem. You have to remember, we're not trying here to push you down to suppress your self-esteem. By telling you that you can't be prideful, don't think that means, don't translate that as you shouldn't have self-esteem. On the contrary, you should feel that if I'm not for myself, who is for me? And you can take care of everything that you need. And if you're here, if I enter into a space, nobody else needs to enter into the space. Everything that I need is before me in the space that I need to take care of. There's nobody else that's necessary. And if I'm not over here, so then there's going to be something lacking. In other words, I'm valuable. You have to look at yourself as valuable. View yourself through the proper lens of a healthy self-esteem. This is what Hillel lived. This is what Hillel taught. This is what Hillel inspired of others. And this is what the codifiers of the Pirkei Avos ask of us, to try to learn from the life of Hillel and to bring this and incorporate these teachings into our own way of living. It takes work. We have to small baby steps, but we can get there. Anyone have any questions on today's Torah lesson? Anyone online have any questions on today's Torah's lesson?